Hello, can everyone hear me okay? Great. Okay, so, I'll get out of the way here. So, how many of you, put your hands up if you think that farmers should be part of our movement? That's fantastic. I can just go home now. I don't need to do this anymore. Okay, so, I just press this button. We are Vegan Support the Farmers. One of the biggest sort of neglected area that there is in the animal rights movement is that we didn't talk to farmers sooner. So we decided that we'd set up Vegan Support the Farmers to try to bridge that gap between us and the farmers. I'm sure there's a missing part here. Okay, there is a missing part here. It's plant-based universities, which fortunately Alistair will be talking about. But Vegan Support the Farmers, we're part of the animal rising ecosystem, which includes plant-based councils, plant-based universities, and Animal Rising, which is conducting at the moment undercover investigations in the RSPCA campaign. Now, Animal Rising or Animal Rebellion has always had dialogue with farmers from the very beginning. But in November last year, we decided that we wanted to set up an actual campaign to really sort of step up our activities and to build those bridges between us and the farming community. Oh, there you go, plant-based universities. So what were we inspired by? Well, one of our biggest inspirations is Martin Luther King. And I've got one of his quotes here that really, really inspired what we do with farmers. So he said, "We must not seek to defeat or humiliate the enemy, but win his friendship and understanding." Now, this is very much at the core of non-violence, and non-violent theory and non-violent communication is what we do in Animal Rising, in our actions, in our communications, and in our network and our dialogue with others. Another inspiration has been Frederick Douglass. Does anyone know who Frederick Douglass was? Yes, he's one of the leaders of the slave abolition movement. He was a slave himself. And when he was freed, he continued to have conversations with his old slave master. And in fact, when his slave master was dying on his deathbed, he went to visit him. And his communications were always that he stated that he was fully against slavery and he was fighting against slavery. But yet he had a really warm and friendly tone with his slave master. He saw the difference between the human and the action. And one of his greatest quotes is that I would unite with anyone to do wrong, and I would unite with anyone to do right and nobody to do wrong. And I think that that is a really sort of great tell of how you can see the difference between loving the human but hating the action. And a more contemporary example is Daryl Davis in the United States. So Daryl Davis is a jazz musician, but he goes around to Ku Klux Klan meetings and he makes friends. And that's all he does, is he makes friends. He helps them out. He goes to their barbecues. He's invited to their homes. And over the course of the last 30 years, he's managed to get 200 members of the Ku Klux Klan to leave the organization just through making friends. So these have been the real inspiration, but one of our biggest inspirations for the organization has been Lesbians and Gays Support the Miners. So in the 1980s, the government was trying to close down the mines, and the miners in the villages were losing their jobs, and they were protesting. And a group of gay men and lesbians in London decided to raise money for the miners, go to their village and give it to them. The thing is, the miners were very homophobic. They'd never met gay people before. And the people from London, they didn't really understand the miners either. But they went there, they made friends, and the very next year, the miners led the Gay Pride March in London. And they were also instrumental in changing the laws around homosexuality. It just goes to show you that two groups have very different views, can actually work together and become friends. So that's why we set up Vegan Support the Farmers. So we go out to different farming events and we do different actions to show that we actually do care about farmers. You can see here that we're running 4 half marathons this year to raise money for young farmer mental health initiatives. And so far we've raised about £5,000. We also go to farming events, like you can see here up in the right-hand corner. We go to agricultural shows. We meet farmers, we have a chat, we show them that, and we ask them about their lives and we listen. We also go to vegan events as well to educate vegans about what the realities are for farmers and why we need to support them. We go to farming conferences. You can see here, this is the Oxford Farming Conference, and we've met many of the farming charities, and they know us now, and they're friends with us, and they welcome us whenever we arrive. And we also give talks on Vegan Support the Farmers to show just how powerful this can be. So what have we achieved? Well, this year we've really done a lot of actions to show that we care about farming issues. Issues we actually do agree on, like fair prices for farmers, reducing imports and listening to them and not corporations. You can see up here we did an action outside Parliament in London where we had 133 empty pairs of pink wellies. That represents the number of farmers who committed suicide in 1 year. We also have done things like we dress up in fruit and veggies to show the kind of supermarket practices and how they affect farmers. And you can see that we've changed some of the supermarket logos and put stickers on them to show that they don't support farmers. This is also us. We went to the Oxford Farming Conference, and we go with our Vegan Support the Farmers logos on, so we don't hide who we are. We're very bold, and we're very honest about who we are. And we were quite scared at the time when we entered the conference, but they opened us with open arms, and they were very welcoming, and we made a lot of connections there, including a farmer who invited us to her farm. And the biggest one is that we actually, because of our connections, got invited to take part in the farming protests that happened in the UK. You can see here that we had our own truck in the tractor rally, and we were able to counteract that kind of anti-vegan, right-wing rhetoric that surrounds farmer protests in the UK, and that's happened in other countries. We've also been invited onto a podcast, one of the biggest farming podcasts in the UK. And yeah, just one of the things is that we have to remember is what we're trying to do is to deal with the fact that farmers have an increasing amount of popularity with the public, but we've seen lots of protests happening in Europe. And what we're trying to do is to try to break that narrative and to be able to build bridges with them. So that's kind of what we do at Vegan Support the Farmers. I co-founded it with myself, my colleague Sarah, who's sitting in the front here, and Tom. And yeah, we just have been making so many connections and just destroying so many stereotypes. And now we've got to the stage where we're being invited into farmer spaces like young farmer clubs to give talks. And yeah, it just goes to show you the power of dialogue and the fact that we really do need to bring farmers into our movement. So thank you.
So, it's on? Yeah. Okay, so now some words about our second speaker, Alistair Stewart, campaign coordinator of plant-based universities. Having grown up in London, Alistair studied linguistics at the University of Cambridge before spending 4.5 years in the British Army. He went vegan on leaving the army and then returned to university, completing science ethics at University College London, where he wrote his dissertation on open rescue. So welcome to the stage, Alistair.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can people hear me okay? Great. So I'm Alistair. I am UK coordinator of Plant-Based Universities, which is an international network of grassroots student-led campaigns calling for the universities to transition to 100% plant-based catering, specifically in response to the climate and nature crises. We are part of the Animal Rising ecosystem, along with Vegan Support the Farmers, as Kerri mentioned earlier. And in terms of numbers, we've got around 400 plus student volunteer campaigners across about 80 universities in the UK and Europe. And we've had wins at 12 universities, 11 in the UK and then one at the University of Graz in Austria since we got going about 3 years ago. I'm going to talk about three things today, three things that we do or we try to do in plant-based universities that I'd say we think we do pretty well, I'm going to try and communicate to you that you may find informative or useful or interesting or decision relevant when it comes to your own work, your own organizing, your own activism and campaigning. The first thing we do is we make bold demands of institutions. Institutions as opposed to individuals. We don't talk about veganism, we don't use the V word. We don't ask individual students or staff members to make changes to their own behavior to go vegan. What we're asking for is 100% plant-based catering at universities. And the reason why we target institutions over individuals is that we're in the business of systems change. If we want to achieve a world of a plant-based food system and animal liberation as quickly as possible, we need to hack and cheat and get there as quickly as we can. And part of that work involves exploiting institutions and getting whole groups of people and whole institutions making this transition themselves. And the change, this institutional change, doesn't just matter within the institution itself, within the confines of the institution itself, although the number of the impact of university catering services going 100% plant-based does matter in terms of the number of animals who are bred into existence to be exploited and killed. And in terms of the environmental impact, we know that animal farming is overwhelmingly, disproportionately more environmentally harmful than the production of plant-based food. That all matters in itself. But just as importantly, even more importantly perhaps, is the impact of socially prestigious, influential institutions like universities publicly transitioning to 100% plant-based catering. It's socially disruptive, it's confrontational, it's annoying, especially to the kind of right-wing media. We see this in the UK all the time. Right-wing media hate plant-based universities winning because it's woke, lefty, liberal, sandal-wearing, tree-hugging students imposing veganism on the university. This is a framing we try to avoid, but we understand that we're going to get this kind of backlash, and that's good. That's how we generate conversation. That's how we increase awareness and salience of plant-based universities and our demands. And we make bold demands. 100% plant-based catering. When it comes to campaigning, we don't compromise on that. 100% plant-based rather than 50% plant-based or default plant-based. This comes with some cons, with some downsides, like the fact it's harder to achieve, it's harder to win when you're campaigning, and it's harder to implement once you've kind of got some kind of win from a student body. But we think the juice is worth the squeeze. We think it's worth making this radical, transformative 100% demand because it draws attention to the issue. Again, it's just another way of increasing awareness of our issues, increasing issue salience, and drawing attention to our issue. And all the time, I'd encourage you to remember plant-based universities, institutional change and social change, and maybe institutional change as a way to achieve social change. That's what we're about. Number two, we use pretty much entirely climate-based, sustainability-based messaging in our campaigning rather than animal-based messaging. Now, I went vegan 2 years and 6 days ago on returning to university to do a master's degree at University College London. And as a brand new vegan, I was deeply committed. I was transformed by this process of going vegan and cared very deeply about animal ethics. And I wanted my activism, my campaigning to be about the animals. And initially, actually, I was actually not that interested in plant-based universities when I went back to university because it wasn't about the animals. It didn't give me the opportunity to talk about what I wanted to talk about. And the moral obligation, the political boycott, that is veganism. But since campaigning first as a student volunteer and then full-time with plant-based universities, I'm increasingly persuaded that using environmental sustainability-based messaging is a really powerful tool for the animal movement, for the animal liberation movement. We make this strategic choice because universities do not have public-facing external commitments to animal welfare or to animal rights, to animal ethics. But they do have public-facing external commitments to sustainability and their environmental impact. And if they say they care about it, that means that we can hold them to account on their commitments, especially when they are the institutions who are producing the research that's telling us that farming animals is actually really bad for the environment. So ultimately, I think we can understand the work that plant-based universities is doing, basically in terms of just students holding their own universities to account for the research they're producing. That's all it is. It's very, very, very straightforward and really powerful. comes with a couple of, there are a couple of kind of qualifiers here. We talk about plant-based universities as having a vegan soul, like the soul of the movement is vegan. All the full-time team, all of our university coordinators, and probably most of our student volunteer campaigners are themselves vegan and would say they are animal rights activists. So internally, there's this kind of understanding or this kind of shared vision, shared values. But just externally, in terms of the meshing we use, it's very environmental. So there's a kind of tension there, which is interesting. But what we're finding is that we are both attracting like the committed, the hardcore vegan animal rights activists who are students, and we're making changes happen at universities and going into meetings with university stakeholders and persuading them to make this transition on the grounds of sustainability. So it seems to be working for us so far. Thirdly and finally, this is how we think about mobilization and organizing people and leadership within plant-based universities. Don't assign tasks, create leaders. Almost all of the power, the value of plant-based universities is not held within the full-time team, within the national coordinators, within those who are working full-time in plant-based universities. That power and that value is held at the grassroots level by the student campaigners. We are wholly dependent on them for the work that we're doing. Worth saying that the full-time team, very important functions that we carry out, like social media and press, and kind of setting the strategy, the vision, organizing the summer camps that we run, and lots of other things. So that work is really important. But most of that work is just to facilitate the mobilization of students. And the work we're doing really comes down to going into universities, training up, bringing together, connecting, and empowering university students to campaign for 100% plant-based catering at their university. And that is really powerful. And giving them that support and that guidance and that training, and also that freedom and that autonomy, I think is a really, really powerful combination. So that's my talk. Thank you very much for listening. Please don't applaud yet. So that's my fault. Please come chat to me for 15 minutes after this session, just outside the front. If you'd like to talk more about plant-based universities, if you've got ideas, if you disagree with some things that I've said. We're also running a kind of little meetup for those involved in the plant-based transition at universities during brunch between 11 a.m. and 12 p.m. tomorrow, so please come along to that. And always, please check us out online on our website, plantbaseduniversities.org, or on social media to sign up to the campaign, follow us, join us, and donate. Thank you very much.
So finally, some words about our third and last speaker today, Monica Wang, founder of XP Vegan. She is a native of Guangxi province, well known for its association with the dog and meat trade. This sparked her passion for saving animals, fighting against the cruelty of animal slaughter, and ultimately adopting a vegan lifestyle. Since 2019, she has dedicated herself full-time to advocating for animals, emerging as a prominent voice among young mainstream vegan millennials. And Monica serves as a director of XP Vegan, bringing a wealth of experiences to the organization. Welcome to the stage.
Thank you. Is this? Oh, yeah, this is working. Okay, thank you very much. It's just an honor to be here to share some of the things we're doing in China. And let's see. Okay, so the name of our organization called XP Vegan, also called 小步 Vegan. 小步 in Mandarin means small steps, means okay, step to step towards veganism. So what is the problem we are trying to solve right now in China? So we are trying to address the issue of limited awareness and discussion surrounding like farm animal suffering in China. We don't talk about animal welfare that much. A lot of people do not know the suffering of the animal in China. So that's the thing we are doing right now. We are doing the very basic education of the animal welfare. But it's like, but we don't use that animal welfare, that word, because it's just not the thing we are talking that much in China. So as you can see the picture, I took this picture last month in Guangxi. So Guangxi is my hometown, and in that province, dog meat is very, like a big consumption. A lot of meat, a lot of people are eating that. So as you can see, they are not only selling dog meat, but like rabbit, chicken, and duck too. But I feel very hurted for the dog meat part. And obviously dog meat is the key selling point of this restaurant. The reason why I feel so hurted is because I have a dog myself. So can you help me to show? So yes, so this is my dog with a very big head, I know, bigger than mine. So she's a Japanese Akita. A lot of people don't know this breed, and a lot of Chinese people know about this breed because of one American movie called Hachi. So yeah, that one. So when I already talked about this story in last week, Pro-Veg Kickstarting for Good, and I want to just share the story with you guys again. So the other day when I was talking about this with Kerri last week, and we were talking about the movie Hachi, and she said, oh, so there's animal die in this movie. So I have one website. Every time when I want to start an animal movie, I'll go to the website to see if there's animal die or like dogs die in the movie. If yes, then I will not open that movie. I won't see that movie. And then I said, oh, it's okay. It's a good movie. No animal die in that movie. Only human being die in that movie. It's good. It's good. Yeah. So can you? Yes. So that's the thing. So after this talk with Kerri, I realized like the thing which I realized or I experienced so many times before, that we are not prepared to see all the sufferings, all the graphic images. So we don't want to see that because it's not good for our mental health. So, and now imagine this. So if you are one of the very common worker in Shanghai, 9-to-5 worker. So every day you need to arrive your office at 9 a.m. and you leave the office at 5 p.m. But not just that, you need to get up 1 hour or 2 hours early to catch the train, which will take 1 hour or 1.5 hours to reach your office. And when the day ends, finally it's 5 p.m. Again, you need to take 1 hour train to go back to your apartment. So, and more than this, you need to do the like overwork every now and then, work at night, work during weekend. Do you have time to care about animal welfare? You don't even have time to reply to the message from your partners, right? Some of you, I don't know, maybe you care a lot. Yeah. So that's the thing. So combined with the example I gave before, we don't want to see all the suffering from the animals, and we don't have too much time and energy to care about other things. So what should we do when it comes to promote veganism or promote plant-based lifestyle? This is the thing we do. We create the debate society. So why we are doing debate? There are a lot of reasons why we want to do this, but one highlight I want to give is because we want us to live outside of the vegan bubble. Like I heard this a lot of times before. Like people say, oh, I have a lot of vegan friends, which is awesome. Like you can share all the information with them. But, yeah, thank you. But it's another bad thing is like you wouldn't know what the public is talking. So during the debate, we hear a lot of things like, oh, it's so crazy you are vegan. And the vegan team will say, it's so crazy that you are a meat eater. Things like that. So we can gather people together to talk about some controversial vegan-related topics. People will sit in the room together to talk about this face to face. And during this time, we will do the filming and we will do the post-production. And in the end, we will show the debate. We post it on WeChat, on YouTube. Everyone can come into this environment and talk about all these topics. So we just to encourage individuals to reconsider their lifestyles and you can make better impact on this by joining the debate. So here are some, vegan is only for the rich, agree or disagree is just one of the topics we gave before. So, okay, let me share the next slide. So, yes, we have a lot of other topics. I show some of them on the top left. For example, some animals are born to be food. Do you agree or disagree? Vegans is only for the rich. Or plant-based meat can save the world. Do you agree or disagree? So we are now preparing for our 5th and 6th debate, but we already posted our first and second one. For the first one, we reached 1.3 million of views, and for the second one, it's 1.6 million of views. So I want to just keep doing this, and this is just one project we are doing right now in China. And thank you very much for your attention. Yeah, so if you have any question, please let me know. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you very much. And now actually would be the time to submit some questions because we haven't had any yet in the app. So if you have any questions, so please do. But if I could have everyone on stage for the Q&A session. I do have some questions we can start with. Hang on. So I think I'll start with Alistair. Let's see here. Yeah. What challenges have you faced in negotiating with universities to meet their 100% plant-based catering demands, and how were these challenges overcome?
So Plant-based Universities has quite a lot of experience now in terms of campaigning, in terms of mobilizing students to campaign for demand 100% plant-based catering at universities. Increasingly, and especially in mainland Europe, we're also gaining experience in doing lobbying and negotiating, going into meetings with decision makers at the universities and coming against problems with regard to implementing 100% plant-based catering at universities. In general, I'd say kind of two challenges, two obstacles that we face as a campaign. The first one is the very broad personal choice argument. I referred to it earlier in my talk. The idea that we in PBU were imposing mandatory compulsory veganism on university students. And we're kind of taking away personal choice. That's one thing that we try and kind of reframe the conversation and say this is about the university making systems level decisions that are in line with its own sustainability commitments. And the second one is a more challenging question about accessibility and inclusivity, and the suggestion that 100% plant-based catering may not be inclusive for every student and member of staff at university on the grounds of health, thinking about food sensory issues, food allergies, and maybe eating disorders as well. So if someone doesn't eat a fully plant-based diet themselves, going to university where only plant-based food is served, how we make that work? So that's something that we're kind of investing work and resources in at the moment.
Thank you. And now one for Kerri. So how do you balance the immediate needs of supporting farmers with a long-term goal of advocating against the exploitation of animals for food or entertainment?
I don't think they need to be balanced. I think they're actually the same goal. In one of our core values is that we believe in justice for all. And justice for farmers is just as important as justice for animals. And what we've seen, especially in the UK over the last few decades is that farmers have been increasingly marginalised. They are living with mental health difficulties. The suicide rate is 3 times the national average. Animal farming isn't any fun, and many of these farmers are born into it generation after generation. So unless we can solve justice issues across the board, you're never going to be able to get animal liberation in that sense, simply because we need to transform farmers just as much as we need to transform ourselves and the rest of society. And as Alistair was saying with plant-based universities, it's not just about the university win, it's actually about transforming those people who are taking part in the campaign. And our role is really to transform farmers' relationship to vegans and vegans' relationships to farmers. So I don't see it being balanced, I see it as one and the same.
Okay, thank you. So now we actually have some questions from the audience. So Kerri, could you tell us a bit more about the reactions of farmers to your work?
Yes, now, I remember a time when the first kind of farmer dialogue we did is during Animal Rising's dairy blockade, where we blocked the dairy distribution centres. We went out to the animal auction houses where they sell animals. We sat in the cafe and talked to farmers. And in preparation for that, we actually sat down and discussed, what do we do if somebody hits us? We actually thought farmers were going to be violent with us. That has not happened at all. We have not had any really negative sort of interactions with farmers in that sense. Most farmers are either very curious and skeptical, or they think, excellent, this is something that really needs to happen. It's one or the other. And as I said in my talk, we don't hide who we are. We are clear that we are vegans, we are animal activists, and we're the people who have chained ourselves to things before. So you can be honest in these conversations. And yeah, most of the time farmers are just very respectful of the fact that you're honest and frank with them, because they are very plain speaking.
Thank you. So now I actually have 2 questions for Alistair that are kind of related. So I'm thinking we can do it like a 2-part question. So first, how much time do universities get to change their menu once they've committed to becoming plant-based? And also, how do you follow up with universities which have made a commitment to 100% plant-based catering to ensure that this commitment is actually implemented?
The transition to 100% plant-based catering universities typically happens over a period of about 3, 4 or 5 years. So in the UK, at least, quite a common policy motion has asked for 60% plant-based by the following academic year, with 10% annual increases up to 100%. So yeah, looking about 4 years there, I think. And in terms of how we actually make sure these implementations happen, how we hold universities to account for these policy motions, again, it's something we have less experience in than we do compared to the amount of experience we have in campaigning and organising students to make this demand. But it is increasingly, as I said, something that we are getting experience in, which is really exciting and really important. I think one thing we're doing is more of an emphasis on meetings and lobbying and negotiations in training. So the first time in our summer camps, in our annual summer camps, we had workshop sessions on those things, which is really exciting. Another thing is getting support from external organizations. So for instance, Humane Society International UK have a program called Forward Food, which helps institutions make transition towards more plant-based catering. And by putting our university coordinators, so our kind of volunteer student campaigners, in touch with Forward Food, they can then get support from them and put them, Forward Food, in touch with university catering, so the head chefs, the catering managers, the commercial directors, and that connection, that relationship really, really helps implementation. So yeah, more of an emphasis on lobbying, negotiating, in training, and external third-party organizations supporting us.
Thank you. So now we have one for XP Vegan, Monica. So do you have an idea of how many people have changed for or considered changing their diets after the debates?
Yeah, it's a very good question because I got that question a lot. We've done some kind of service after the debate, and usually we will do the screening too, offline one, and immediately after watching we will do the survey. So usually we got the percentages like 20 to 30% of people. They will say, "Oh, this is I got inspired by some of the points and I want to change or try to change my diet after watching this." So yeah, but I have to say for the future work, we want to do the survey more and get reach to more people to answer this question like, oh, do you want to ever change your point of view or your lifestyle after watching the debate? Yes, thank you.
Thank you. And now one from for Kerri. Actually, do you prioritize showing your support for purely crop farmers over animal farmers, or don't you distinguish?
We don't distinguish at all. As I said, we care about the human behind the label of farmer, not about the actions they take. And so as our main goal is to really transform that relationship the movement has with farmers, I think that it's really important that we don't distinguish. And also reaching animal farmers probably is more of the priority in a sense, because they are the people who we want to actually build relationships with going forward, because we're making huge demands on people who have done this for generations after generations and people whose sole income derives from it, and you're asking them to change completely their skill set, to change completely what their family relies on for income. And because we're making these huge demands, we have a responsibility to care for them. So yeah, I would say that we don't distinguish between farmers, but we definitely want to reach animal farmers more.
Thank you. Now for Alistair, we kind of touched on this, but do you have any system of evaluating or controlling the commitments of universities to avoid them not implementing the commitments?
So far, we don't. I think that doing more gathering of metrics and tracking, tracking data and gathering data, understanding what works, what doesn't work, is something that I'm interested in doing within the UK core team over the next few months. So yeah, currently no, but I think that's probably a good idea. And I think that having making stuff public is really important. So when a university commits to 100% plant-based catering over a number of years, making that public, getting that out into the press, is a really powerful way of then helping the PBU campaigners hold the university to account. So that's one thing that I think matters. But beyond that, yeah, I guess watch this space.
Now for Kerri, do you encounter a lot of antagonism from the farmers, or are they open-minded and open to discussion? Is there any backlash from the farmer groups?
Backlash from the farmer groups, no. Backlash from vegan groups, yes. Farmers are human beings. Some of them are terrible people. Some of them are great people. It all really does depend. And antagonism, no, not really. Jokes, sarcasm, that sort of thing. The younger ones are a bit more. They like to tell jokes, and they don't really understand veganism very well. But generally, because we go there with the sense of that we want to make a friend, not that we want to go there and debate them, I think it's very hard for them to be antagonistic towards us, or hopefully.
Thank you. And now for Alistair. So we have heard that universities might lose sales over changing to plant-based, around 26% even. Have you ever come across this, and maybe universities would consider going back to serving meat?
Yeah, I'd love to hear. If you know where that 26% stat comes from, yeah, please chat afterwards. I'd love to hear that. Certainly, I should have said earlier in the question about backlash and kind of obstacles that we face. Financial consideration is definitely one of those things that comes not so much from students, but from the university and the decision makers and stakeholders there. Definitely something we're aware of and we come up against. One way we are currently working to oppose that is that we commissioned some research from Bryant Research, who are a kind of think tank, who are consultancy, who work on the plant-based transition, who have looked at the cost per meal of plant-based versus lacto-vegetarian versus animal flesh-based meals, and are finding that plant-based meals are really significantly cheaper. Similarly, 2021 Oxford study found that in high-income countries, plant-based meals, plant-based diets up to 1/3 cheaper than alternatives. So this is the kind of research that we're trying to show and talk about, give to our student campaigners, so then when they go and talk to university decision makers in catering, like head chefs, they can say, actually, the science is saying, and the catering is saying that we can make this food cheaper, which is good because you can then transfer what's the word? The cheaper cost onto the students, or the university can make more profit, and they probably care about both things. Yeah. I see. So so we've seen at King's College London, for instance, not because of a plant-based universities campaign, but just because of their own sustainability awareness, the head chef there has made all the pastries fully plant-based without really kind of making a big deal of it. And there's been like no negative impact whatsoever on sales or a number of students coming there. So I think this stuff really can be done. It's not clear to me if the reason for that difference is because of the cost or because they just don't want to eat plant-based. So yeah, and that's another thing that we think about in PBU. And from my perspective, the way to get around that issue is by having more conversation, doing more education, more outreach from students to students while they're campaigning for 100% plant-based. And then also, crucially, after there's been a decision or a vote for 100% plant-based catering. So that it's not just the case where a bunch of students campaign for this thing, they get the win, and they just like let the university run with it. There's got to be a lot of work from us as PBU, from other organizations like Forward Food, to try and really make a success out of the implementation. Because case studies like this are the kind of thing that really pose a threat to us and what we're asking for. So it really is important, and we talk about this in summer camps, in training, that students are really doing this work of following up and making a success of the transition.
So we are actually running out of time. I just want to give a very, very short one to Monica to wrap this up. So if you could answer really briefly, how would you describe vegan advocacy in China? Is it growing?
Can you repeat the question?
How would you describe vegan advocacy in China? Is it growing? Is it becoming larger?
I would say, of course, it's not just in China, it's in the whole world.
Yeah.
But after pandemic, I think things are going a little bit slow. And again, not just in China, the whole world too. But I think it's very positive, at least from my point of view, and a lot of other organization owners, vegan organizations owners in China. We are very positive about the future. Yeah. So.
Thank you. So we're actually out of time. So sorry you submitted questions a bit late. So I had to do some of my pre-planned questions. But anyway, I would like to thank all the three speakers for really good talks. And I would like to thank both the in-person attendees, the online person attendees, and then online attendees. And then I would also like to ask you to rate the session in the event app. And just say thank you very much, and hope you've had a good conference. Thank you.